If you ever focused a Pentax Spotmatic by hand, you know Takumar lenses had a feeling modern glass rarely gives back. Smooth metal barrels, warm color, soft glow, and that slow, deliberate way of shooting. But among all the old M42 classics, 5 Takumars still stand out today. One for street, one for everyday memories, one for portraits, one for reach, and one legendary 50 that still has photographers chasing its glow on new cameras even now. Welcome to Alt Buzz Lenses. If classic glass stories are your thing, subscribe now, because this is exactly what we do here. At number 5, we have the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar, 35mm f2. It gives us the side of vintage photography that modern glass often forgets. Real streets, real distance, and real human perspective. 35mm was never a dramatic focal length. It did not compress backgrounds like an 85 or pull you into a scene like a 50. It simply showed life the way your eyes remembered it, wide enough to include the street, the light, the moment happening just beyond arm's reach, but tight enough to keep it feeling personal. Photographers who worked with the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 35mm f2 were not chasing bokeh. They were chasing the frame. Street corners, doorways, market stalls, family scenes, travel days that needed to be remembered whole rather than cropped. This was the lens that went everywhere because it saw everything. What made it special was not technical excellence. Wide open, it was capable and warm, with that classic Takumar color rendering that leaned slightly toward the amber and gold rather than the clinical neutral that most modern lenses aim for. It was honest without being harsh. Stopped down, it became genuinely sharp with real contrast, the kind of image that felt like it had been seen rather than engineered. Where it falls short is no surprise. A modern 35mm prime will beat it in corner sharpness, flare resistance, autofocus speed, and coating technology. On a mirrorless camera adapted with an M42 mount, you will work harder and get fewer keepers. That is simply the truth. But the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 35mm f2 still matters because of what it gives back in return. It slows you down. It makes you move your feet. It removes the safety net of autofocus burst shooting and gives you back the discipline of one frame, one decision, one moment. Today, adapted on a mirrorless body, it still produces images with a vintage street character that modern corrected lenses deliberately design out. This lens does not beat modern 35mm glass by being cleaner. It beats it by feeling more human. At number 4, we have the Super-Takumar 55mm f1.8. This was not the exotic Takumar. It was not the fast 50 that collectors hunt for or the portrait prime that gets discussed in vintage lens forums. The Super-Takumar 55mm f1.8 was the lens that came with the camera, the one that stayed mounted when you were not thinking about lenses at all. It was the glass you loaded film under, the focal length you used on family trips and quiet Sunday afternoons and moments you did not plan to remember but did. It was, in the most honest sense, the lens that taught a generation of photographers how to see. What it offered was simple and right. A normal field of view, close to what your eyes already understood, a maximum aperture that handled low light without drama, and a rendering that was warm and honest without being excessive. Sharpness was genuine, especially stopped down to f4 and beyond. The focusing ring moved with the smooth mechanical precision that defined the Takumar family. Not fast, not modern, but deeply satisfying. There was nothing fashionable about this lens. It did not chase speed or focal length drama. It just worked, quietly and reliably, in the hands of people who were not thinking about gear at all. Today, the Super-Takumar 55mm f1.8 is still one of the most affordable and accessible ways to experience M42 glass on a modern mirrorless camera. You can adapt it for almost nothing. Mount it on a Sony, a Fujifilm, a Nikon Z or an OM system body, and immediately feel the difference between modern optical perfection and vintage mechanical soul. It will not beat modern normal primes technically, but it will remind you that the best lens is sometimes just the one that stays on the camera. This was not the exotic Takumar. It was the everyday Takumar. And sometimes that is exactly why people remember it. At number 3, we have the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 85mm f1.8. The 85mm focal length has always belonged to a particular kind of photographer, not the street shooter or the travel documentarian, someone more patient, more deliberate, someone who chose their subjects carefully and waited for expression rather than firing frames and sorting later. The Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 85mm f1.8 was built for that photographer. It was Asahi's answer to the question of whether the Takumar family could produce genuinely serious portrait glass. And the answer, even by today's standards, is yes. Wide open at f1.8, it delivered subject isolation and background separation with a softness that felt natural rather than computed. The out-of-focus rendering had the quality that portrait photographers refer to when they talk about a lens having character. Not perfectly smooth in the modern clinical sense, but organic, with a quality that made backgrounds feel like atmosphere rather than blur. Skin tones came through with warmth. Contrast was classic rather than aggressive. It was not a perfect lens. Modern 85mm primes will resolve finer detail wide open, handle autofocus with a speed this lens cannot approach, and produce more consistent corner-to-corner sharpness across the frame. Those are real advantages and honest ones. But the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 85mm f1.8 still earns its place because portrait photography was never only about resolution. It was about the patience to wait for the right expression. It was about the physical act of focusing manually and making that extra moment of stillness part of the process. Photographers who use this lens today on adapted mirrorless bodies report the same thing. It changes how you shoot. You slow down, you become more deliberate, and sometimes the portrait you get from that slower approach has a quality of attention that no autofocus system can replicate. This lens proves Takumar was not just charming, it could be genuinely serious. If you enjoy lens stories that go beyond sharpness charts and into the history, feel, and character of classic glass, subscribe to Alt Buzz Lenses right now. This channel is about the lenses photographers still remember, not just the newest gear on the shelf. Hit subscribe, and let's keep going. At number 2, we have the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 135mm f2.5. Before the 70 to 200mm zoom became the default choice for working photographers, the 135mm prime was a real and respected tool. It sat in camera bags alongside normal primes as a serious second lens, the reach option, the compression option, the focal length you mounted when the 50 was too intimate, and the world needed to be pulled closer. The Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 135mm f2.5 was one of the most capable versions of that idea. At f2.5, it was fast enough to work in lower light. At 135mm, it compressed backgrounds with authority and gave subject separation a quality that normal primes simply could not deliver. Photographers used it for outdoor portraits, stage performances, sports when the light was good, and any situation where distance needed to become intimacy. The build quality was solid metal and deliberate glass, the kind of lens that felt like a piece of equipment rather than a consumer product. Focusing was smooth and confident across its range. The rendering leaned classic. Strong contrast, warm color, and a way of compressing a scene that felt intentional rather than accidental. Where it falls short today is the same honest answer as all the others. Modern telephoto zoom lenses will give you autofocus, optical stabilization, and more consistent sharpness across varying conditions. But ask it of someone who enjoys the process, and the Super-Multi-Coated Takumar 135mm f2.5 still delivers something modern zoom lenses rarely offer: simplicity, directness, and the feeling that you chose exactly this distance for exactly this frame. There was no zooming to correct a lazy composition. There was only moving, deciding, and committing. Before modern telephoto zooms became the safe choice, lenses like this made 135mm feel personal, direct, and beautifully simple. At number 1, we have the Super-Takumar 50mm f1.4. There are vintage lenses that are respected. There are vintage lenses that are collected. And then there are vintage lenses that have become something closer to myth. Lenses that photographers who never used film still talk about, still seek out, still mount on modern mirrorless bodies, just to see what the conversation is about. The Super-Takumar 50mm f1.4 is that lens. It is the one Takumar that transcends the category of vintage curiosity and enters the territory of genuine legend. And it earned that status the right way, not through rarity, but through character. Wide open at f1.4, this lens does something that modern 50mm primes have almost entirely designed away. It glows. Not in a broken or failed sense. In the sense that light wraps around subjects slightly, that contrast softens at the edges, that the image has an atmosphere rather than just resolution. Highlights breathe. Shadows carry depth. Skin tones come through with a warmth that sits in the gold and amber range that film photographers remember instinctively. It is not the sharpest lens wide open. A modern 50mm prime will resolve more detail and maintain contrast more consistently across the frame. But stopped down to f2.8 and beyond, the Super-Takumar 50mm f1.4 transforms. It becomes genuinely sharp, controlled, and capable. The same lens, different discipline, different result. There is also the matter of the thorium glass versions, which have become a particular area of fascination for vintage lens enthusiasts. Certain early production runs used thorium oxide in the glass elements to achieve a high refractive index without the optical compromises of earlier designs. Over decades, these elements have yellowed slightly, adding an additional warm cast to the rendering that collectors and shooters have come to associate specifically with this lens. Some photographers correct it in post. Others embrace it as part of the lens's identity. Either way, it adds one more layer to a lens that was already full of stories. On a modern mirrorless camera with an M42 adapter, this lens feels like bringing a time machine to a photo walk. The physicality of focusing, the weight of the metal barrel, the click of the aperture ring, the glow in the viewfinder when the light catches right. It is a complete experience that no modern lens currently offers. Modern lenses can beat it technically, but this Takumar wins in the one place charts cannot measure: atmosphere. Modern lenses are sharper, faster, and more corrected than anything Asahi built. That is simply true. But in removing every imperfection, they also removed something harder to name: the feeling that a lens had a personality. Takumar lenses still carry that. Subscribe to Alt Buzz Lenses for more stories like this one. Some lenses blur the image. The best ones blur time.